The United States Air Force trains as many as 40,000 new airmen each year, and if you've never gone through basic training yourself, you might not realize just what a big deal that is. The transition from civilian to service member is unique for every new recruit, and I definitely still remember how terrified I was when I started Marine Corps recruit training on Parris Island, all the way back in the Dark Ages. And to some extent, that discomfort was genuinely justified. Basic training isn't just about teaching you how to lace up your boots or how to march to cadence. It's about changing the very framework with which you perceive yourself and the world around you. You aren't training for a new job, you're learning new cultural norms, establishing moral and ethical expectations that you might not have previously held for yourself or even for others, and you're coming to terms with the sometimes scary reality that your nation will soon be counting on you to do your job, to make mission, and maybe to risk your life for the people around you and for the flag on your cap or your shoulder, or maybe your rucksack. The reality of military basic training is that you're learning to be a part of a much larger machine. But unlike similar roles in the private or commercial sectors, you're also learning that there really could be situations or circumstances where even you recognize that a good outcome for that machine might be more important than a good outcome for you. You're being introduced to risk, being taught to identify it, to assess it, and then to mitigate it. But throughout every step of basic training, you are aware that risk is a part of the job. And being good at what you do is often just as much about your ability to manage risk and to control your reactions to it as it is about technical proficiency in your job field. That is to say, that being a good Marine, a good airman, a good soldier, sailor, guardian, or coastie isn't just about learning the skills, it's about learning to take your own reins, to take the hard right over the much easier wrong, to do what needs to be done, not because it's your job, but because it's the mission. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who dug which hole as long as the holes get dug. Of course, that isn't always easy, whether it's your first day at BMT or your 300th in the hills of Afghanistan. There are internal struggles that come and go like the tides, leaving you homesick and depressed one day and ready to take any hill you're pointed at the next. But there are also external ones, like interpersonal conflict with your teammates or frustration about leadership decisions that you just don't understand. So, when I recently sat down with General Kevin Schneider and Command Chief Master Sergeant Katie McCool, the command element of America's Pacific Air Forces with some 46,000 troops under their charge, one of the first questions I wanted to ask them was how the Air Force is shifting its approach to training to effectively prepare airmen for the rigors of combat in the 21st century. Now, I've asked other leaders similar questions in the past, and I was very much prepared to get a standard nuts and bolts answer about new training exercises or courses of instruction that were tailored to the modern high-end fight. And while Chief McCool and General Schneider did provide that sort of technical insight, they also did something that really stood out to me as a salty old sergeant of Marines. They spoke with an immense sense of pride for their airmen, but not a pride that was centered specifically on their ability to receive training and follow orders. PACAF's leadership seems to just expect that much from all their troops, not out of discipline, but rather out of a mutual respect for one another's professional credibility. They see them as adults and treat them as such. Then what's more, the changes they highlighted as being important to the future of the Air Force weren't relegated to just basic military training or junior enlisted airmen or even the NCO Corps of the branch. Instead, they spent a fair bit of time talking about the incredible skill sets that their airmen bring to bear and the role that the Air Force as a whole and leaders like them have to embrace as troop enablers, trusting their troops to find solutions and giving them the resources and support they need to enact them and succeed. And as they'll explain, a lot of that comes down to answering just one question: why? Are there changes to the way that we recruit, the way that we train, the way we sustain airmen that we need to be looking towards that maybe haven't been implemented yet?
I think it is critically important that as we look at basic military training, we continue to be evolutionary in the way that we approach training. And it's not just this fight, it's about being ready all the time, understanding what the threats are, how our airmen are going to respond to them, and then it's really important that airmen understand what it means to actually be an airman. What is air power? How do we employ the systems that we have? And so this, everyone talks about this generation. This generation is incredibly smart, and they have access to information all the time at their fingertips. We just need to harness that and make sure we're providing them the tools to be successful.
A couple of weeks ago, I was invited to speak at the Air Force Academy, and I was amazed at the level of knowledge from cadets, 17 to 21 years old, about the strategic security situation that we live out here in the Pacific, that they're getting ready to join as they commission into the Air Force. So I think that they're far more knowledgeable and savvy than I was at their age about what I was getting into. But that still doesn't relieve us as to the command chief's point of explaining the why, what it is that we're doing, and her point, and she's got a great story about even for exercises, why we do exercises, why we do specific individual events in terms of what we're getting after. For leaders, I think we know because we go through the planning process and we sit through the briefs and the progress reviews and we get it. But for the senior airman out there on the line, or maybe the first lieutenant in the flying unit, who's just living more of a day-to-day life on the flight line or life in the fighter squadron, I think we still need to communicate within our force to explain the why we do the things that we do, just to continue to remind them.
In the past, maybe we've really taught things in a very stovepipe measure, and now the follow-on to Pacer Forge is Bracer Forge, which is basic reinforcement, where in tech school we're actually having them utilize their skills across tech schools so that they can see how intel ties into maintenance and how all of the picture comes together, so that when they get to their base, they realize they're just one piece of a very large puzzle.
Coming from the perspective of some junior enlisted in the Marine Corps, I love to hear that, because that was always our complaint. As a sergeant and below, we go, why are we doing this? What are we getting out of this? And the answers weren't always forthcoming. So to hear from the highest levels of leadership, when I say, what do we need to be doing differently with training? And you guys say, we can be improving on this, rather than they can be improving on this. From the perspective of junior enlisted person, that's really heartening to hear, that there's improvement on every level that we could be working towards, and we're all trying to get better every day.